Joining us now from Oakland University is their Executive Director of Global Engagement, Rosemary Max, joins us now on the Oakland County Megacast. Rosemary, thank you for being with us today.
Tyler, thanks for having me.
I appreciate having you on. So first of all, tell us a little bit about your role as the Executive Director of Global Engagement, because so much of what our universities are doing nowadays isn't just local, it's also nationally, and it's all around the globe as well.
Yep, that's so true. And so universities are actors in the world and around the globe. And so my office handles all the incoming international students and scholars that come to Oakland University, as well as all of our outgoing study abroad students. We have an English Language Institute where students come to learn English before going on for their degrees at Oakland. And then we also work on all the international agreements we have with university partners around the world. So quite a bit.
So in the past, Oakland University has been more of a regional educational hub in the state of Michigan, for mostly in the lower eastern half of the state. And in recent years, it has expanded, it has grown. Certainly in the last couple of decades, it's become much more of a prominent university in the state of Michigan, regionally in the Midwest. And so as the university continues to expand its programming, how important has it been for Oakland University to make its mark outside of Michigan and outside of the U.S. in order to continue its mission right here in Oakland County?
That's a great question. You know, Oakland County itself is so international, with so many international businesses that are based here. And I think our students come here from overseas because of that, and because of Oakland University and our connection to those companies and to the county and the great work that's done in Michigan. And so international students has been a growing population at Oakland over the past 5 years. There was a bit of a dip like everywhere else with COVID, but we're seeing a bit of a rebound hopefully for fall with respect to international students. And so that they come here for those reasons. Many of those students are in STEM fields. They are the students that go on and do PhDs in engineering. There's students that go on and teach our kids as they, go into the STEM fields in high school and in college. And so Oakland really is well positioned because of the types of programs it offers and the county in which we sit.
So some of those outreach programs and some of those programs that are imported into Oakland University are about expanding education to educators outside of Oakland University and outside of our local area. That includes a program that Oakland University has recently engaged in called the Exchange for Pakistani Secondary Educators and Administrators, or EPSIA, for equity, access, and learning disabilities in secondary schools in Pakistan. Can you tell us about this program, how it benefits those educators in Pakistan, and why it was important for Oakland University to participate in this kind of an educational outreach program at another institution?
Yep, so this is Oakland University's first U.S. State Department grant. And so the U.S. State Department funds many different kinds of programs bringing international people to the United States for all sorts of reasons. But one of the key reasons, in addition to the content that they're here for, that they study, is public diplomacy. And so Oakland is very strong in education and learning difference and learning disabilities, what these students are coming to learn about. There are 20 teachers from high schools in Pakistan who the idea of learning difference and learning disability and teaching to those sorts of needs is not as developed in Pakistan, and we have a lot to offer here in that regard. And so this is the program that we worked with the State Department and local partners, Global Ties Detroit, to put together and have these students come and really understand what it is to have different kinds of learners in the classroom, and really to go back and hopefully start something quite unique for Pakistan and a network, and training other teachers and making them aware of these issues in the classroom.
So Rosemary, participating in these programs isn't something that just magically happens. You're not just going to randomly get a note from the Secretary of State, from the State Department, that they need help in this particular program and they chose your university. So how did Oakland University first hear about this program and then engage with the State Department to participate in this program?
Well, we work closely with Global Ties Detroit, who runs a lot of programs for the State Department in the Detroit area with respect to public diplomacy. And there was a grant that came up that was linked to Pakistan, and a university lead was needed. And we put together this idea based on our strength and kind of the connection that we had to Pakistan already, and we just applied for the grant and we won it. So it sounds easy. It was a lot of work, and twice postponed, I might add, because of COVID. The group was supposed to be here 2 years ago. But that's how we found out about the grant, and we just put in the hard work to get it and win it.
Rosemary, I would imagine that it's not just Pakistan where some of these issues or these deficiencies, probably is a better way to put it, in their special education programs are present. How much of an issue is this on an international level where special education programs or educational programs for those with disabilities might not be at its most prominent point in other nations?
So that's a great question. I mean, we're just, even in the United States, we're, developing responses and interventions to help these students. And so there are many countries, so many countries in which this is an issue. We just had a visit from a colleague from Egypt, and he was most interested and focused in on potentially doing something with respect to this for universities and teachers in Egypt. And we have one of our colleagues who is an Oakland University professor who is from Ghana, who's working with this group from Pakistan, and he looks at this from a slightly different perspective from sub-Saharan Africa. So this is something that is just really needed around the world.
And these programs are complicated. It's not necessarily a one-size-fits-all definition of how to teach somebody with a disability or a group of kids with disabilities. And it's complicated. It takes years for people to develop those skills and develop those programs properly, especially when you're developing them in a completely different culture. So how does that factor in to Oakland University's support for these Pakistani educators as they're learning some of these techniques and trying to apply them to the students that they'll be teaching?
So that's a great point. And one of the things that we've said to the teachers while they're here is that we show you kind of a set of tools and things that can be used in classrooms here. They differ depending on students. They differ depending on, whatever the student's need is. And so we've constantly reinforced with them that you're going back to a different culture in which family structure is different, maybe a stigma to admit a learning disability is completely different than it is here in the United States. And so these teachers really have a lot of work ahead of them in terms of thinking about what they have observed here and how that might fit in Pakistan. And so we'll be connected with them over the year a couple times to see how they're progressing. And then they come back next summer to continue with the program for another 6 weeks.
And so what sort of dialogue is there coming back from those teachers from Pakistan? And what sort of lessons can then be learned by your staff at Oakland University from communicating with these educators who have obviously different perspectives and different cultures behind their teaching that may be very useful right here at Oakland University?
I think what they always remind us is that a culture is different, everyone is different. And that's a lesson that we can apply even to people who are from the same neighborhood or the same country. You always have to step back and try to understand where that person's coming from, what's feeding into how they're perceiving things. We've been in a lot of meetings here at Oakland where I've maybe seen one thing in the meeting and the participants just being from a completely different place have keyed in on something else. And so it's just a reminder to just stay back and kind of reflect before you assume something about another person if they're from another culture, or even if they're from our own culture. So it's just always a good reminder.
We're joined by Rosemary Max. She is the Executive Director of Global Engagement at Oakland University, joining us on the Oakland County Megacast. More information can be found on everything going on at Oakland University, including this special program through the State Department, by visiting oakland.edu. That's oakland.edu for everything that you need to know to keep up to date on what's going on at Oakland University, located in Rochester Hills in Oakland County, Michigan. And so what are some of those techniques that are that have been discussed in this program with these Pakistani educators, or what sort of different routines have been put in place in order to really help them bolster some of their programs as they're building their special education programs overseas?
Well, we've done a couple things, and I think they've all been really important. So one is they've had a morning seminar just getting, familiar with the language of learning disability and learning difference by OU faculty in our School of Education. And then they've had this amazing opportunity to be at Eaton Academy in Birmingham, which is a school that teaches K through 12, and many of their students learn differently. And so they've actually had a hands-on experience there with teachers, with students, understanding how, they work with students and meet them where they are and support them to get to their learning goals. And then they're in a seminar now in the afternoon, which is really kind of more research focused while they're here, kind of looking up, bibliography, articles that are focused on this topic, trying to really put together a research question or something that fits their context at home. So when they go home, they'll work on it for the academic year and then hopefully come back, and we'd like to do some sort of conference or maybe even see if we can get some of them to publish here and then in Pakistan.
So Rosemary, this EPSIA program through the State Department, it's a significant program. It's a great outreach program. It's doing great things for students and educators in Pakistan, but it's also such great public relations locally and internationally from Oakland University. How is this program's participation inspiring your team and the entire university really for more outreach programs potentially in the future?
Well, that's a great question. I think just for my team, there's been a lot of hard work in pulling this off logistically, not only making sure that they're getting what they need in the classroom, but they're having a good time and enjoying our area and really showcasing the Detroit area. So I think we know now that we can do this type of program, that Oakland is a great place for this type of program, that our campus is responsive and open to these programs in the future. And really for me, it reminds me how much the Detroit area has to offer to people who come from overseas. There's just so much to see and do here. And there's a great story in how Detroit fits into, U.S. history and world and the world. And so we like to tell that to visitors when they come from overseas.
We're joined by Rosemary Max, the Executive Director of Global Engagement at Oakland University. More information can be found on all of their programs in global engagement and beyond by visiting their website at oakland.edu. That's oakland.edu for more information. And Rosemary, we have a few more minutes with you before we'll say goodbye today. What other sort of programs are underway or are soon to be underway through your department at Oakland University to continue that global outreach, which is so important in the world that we have today, even for universities?
Well, one of the key ways that Oakland reaches abroad is through international agreements with various universities. And while there was a bit of a dip in non-activity in the first year of COVID, I would say the last year we've signed so many agreements with universities from around the globe. And so we're looking forward to welcoming students and scholars from those places. We're working on agreements with Mexico. We've signed more agreements with China, a new one in Indonesia, Jordan. And so we are just expanding internationally and looking forward to building those partnerships, deepening those partnerships, and developing programming and other things with our partners from around the globe.
Rosemary, thank you so much for joining us, giving us some insight into this special program that's of course a partnership between Oakland University and the U.S. State Department, and giving us some insight into the international relations that go into running a university such as Oakland.
Tyler, thank you for the opportunity.